Testing.
Is that on there?
Check, check.
Sure. Is it okay to get started? Okay, well, we're going to get started. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Brandon Dole. I'm with Scott Edwards Architecture. I'm an associate principal there. So I co-lead their civic portfolio or civic projects. I've had the pleasure of being on the West Linn project from the very beginning. I was part of the pursuit team. And I'm here today just to present back to the three neighborhood associations, anybody listening online, and the ultimate goal here is to fulfill the neighborhood association meeting for our land use application. So our application is imminent. We have a few things pending, and then we'll be actually submitting that. So again, thank you for tonight. We don't really want to present. We want to have a conversation. So if you have questions, feel free to stop, ask. Would love to engage in dialogue. We are really going to try to keep tonight to the design and not really talk much beyond that, but we'll try to field as many questions as possible.
Oh, I would like to know how it's fitting in there off of Salama.
Yes, yes, we will definitely make sure you leave tonight understanding that and then be able to field questions. So hopefully we get there. I'll let my colleague Jeff introduce himself so you know who he is.
Jeff Dunn. I'm an architect. I'm the main project manager for this project. I played a pretty big role in the design also. I've got, close to 20 years of experience as an architect all up and down the West Coast, and really just excited to be working on this one. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. We're excited to have Jeff on the project. Also tonight on the project team is Eric Lias, Public Works Director. We'll try to let him stay in the background and not engage him too much, but if there's a question for him, I'm sure he'd be willing to take it. As most of you know, this is a City of West Linn project. The goal of the project is to develop an operations facility that will do some consolidation of city staff. The city's purchased about 30 acres, and we're going to develop approximately 7 of those acres. As you know, it's former ODOT right-of-way that has actually become part of the city. This project did not start out the way you see it here today. It started out as one building. Originally, we had this idea that we could, due to the site's topography, steep slope, some slope stability concern, an actual 35-foot grade difference between what would be an upper and lower terrace. We really thought that the best way to address the site would be one building. Thank you. One building that then would navigate that elevation change. We got pretty far along into the design. We built out a full consultant team, started looking at environmental implications on the site, and quickly found that there's a wetland on the site and actually a natural spring. So this site, beyond just slope, beyond soil stability concern, it really has thrown a lot of challenges, if you will, and from an environmental standpoint. But us at SCA really look at challenges as opportunities. And so Jeff will talk a little bit more about that. But so that you know, today we're looking at 3 buildings, an office building and 2 warehouse buildings that are nestled into that site. And the idea is that it is low impact to the site and low impact to the surrounding neighborhoods. The idea is that this represents you as citizens in the city of West Linn. It provides a nice community building or amenity, if you will, and then will also propel the city's operations folks into the future. If you've not been to their current facility, don't just show up, but you might inquire about it. Yeah, and so you know that if you've been there, and I see heads nodding, you've been there. Yeah, there's a big need, right? So I think this is great. We really have balanced wants and needs with the project, and we really feel like this moving forward is going to be a major success in addition to the city. In terms of process and schedule, we are currently in the process of contracting with the general contractor for an alternate delivery method, CMGC, construction manager, general contractor. And essentially what that is bringing the contractor on now in design so we can help verify constructability concerns. We can help verify project budget, construction values, and just make sure due to all of the complexity from an environmental standpoint, we're addressing it. And so we've put out a public notice of intent with Skanska. We're, like I said, in the process of actually contracting with them. And once that is fulfilled, we're really excited to have that group on board. They have leadership that live in West Linn, so they are deeply vested in this project as well. I'm going to stop talking unless there's any questions on that. And I'm going to hand it over to Jeff and let him talk a little bit about the awesome design that we have for you tonight. Good. All right, Jeff.
Thank you. So I just wanted to set some context a little bit. So this is where we are in terms of schedule. So we've been through pre-design. We started schematic design at the beginning of the year. We kind of restarted schematic design in terms of what Brandon was talking about with the wetland and all those things. We'll guide you through all that stuff. That brought us to the kind of end of February. During schematic design, we sent the wetland delineation to the state. So that's currently under review right now. They have to concur with our delineation. It takes a long time. Design development, we moved through that. During design development was about 8-10 weeks, something like that. We did go for our pre-application meeting for land use. And then we also had a sustainability advisory board meeting during design development, and they gave us some comments and questions. And then we closed out design development kind of mid to late May. So early June, we're moving forward. We still have land use application ahead of us. We still have permitting, building review, all those things still ahead of us. But the next big milestone is our land use application. And then I think everyone in this room knows where it is, but this is just a big, back out kind of context map of where the project site is up there, kind of just south of Barrington Heights and just north of the 205. Beautiful site. So I just wanted to kind of guide, and I have the site plan and the floor plans and the elevations at the end of this presentation so we can look at those. But I wanted to guide everybody through just kind of some big design features for the project because I think it's actually kind of ambitious in a few different ways.
Continue. This is what we're utilizing.
Yeah.
Good point. I think he wants the site map. Yeah. So I've highlighted kind of the immediate site here, but there's actually more site area to the east of the site that we're going to spread into with some of the utility functions.
Yeah, the former rest area is this side.
It's part of, it's the green up there, yeah. Yeah.
This, this is the very late.
Thanks, Eric. And I'm not going to belabor this stuff too much, but we're excited about it. We want to spread the excitement. So I'm going to talk about preserving the wetland, which Brandon kind of started to discuss. I'm going to talk about a mass plywood cross-laminated timber structural system for the building. PV arrays, which are solar panels on the roof. I'm going to talk about smaller separate buildings as a way to kind of encourage movement across the site and fitness. And then the selective preservation of some of the existing trees on site, because you have some really tall, really beautiful existing trees. And so there's a lot of big cut and fill because of the grades, because of all the existing conditions, but we are kind of taking a proactive approach in preserving some of those trees. Because even if you can preserve 6 or 12, it'll make a huge impact from day one. Okay, so the first point is the wetland. And again, Brandon started on this, so I won't spend too much, but you can see the wetland kind of in the lower right corner there. So that's been delineated. That's actually the shape of it. That's what's with the state right now. So, you know, a year ago, before we knew its delineation and its scope, we had a building that spanned part of that. And you can do that, but you have to mitigate. So we didn't want to mitigate, and we also just love the idea of responding to that challenge as a kind of prompt for something better to make the project more interesting. So we pushed everything west. We broke the building into smaller pieces. So instead of one big tall building, now it's 3 smaller, essentially single-story buildings. One of them has a mezzanine in it, but you can see them in the kind of rendering there. So we like this idea because it makes the construction a little bit simpler. It lowers the height of the buildings, which we think will be nice for people looking down from above. And it also breaks them out so that some of the turning radiuses and truck movements work a little bit better for the city staff too. Next, please. So we're really excited about this. You've probably heard of CLT, cross-laminated timber. So there's been a lot of advancement in using heavy timber in buildings in the last decade. And so, you know, maybe a decade ago, we would have built this out of steel, or maybe some combination of concrete and steel, maybe light frame, but you can actually build the whole. Right now, we've got building C as mass timber, but we are entertaining the idea that we might do all 3 out of it. It's also becoming much less expensive than it used to be, so that's a real advantage. So the photo on the left is our rendering of the project, obviously, and then the photo on the right is from Frere's Lumber, which is kind of near Detroit Lakes, Oregon. They source all their lumber from within 60 miles of their site, so it's a locally sourced, local labor, all that stuff, and the carbon footprint for the project far lower than building out of steel or concrete. Happy to answer more questions about that. I love talking about it, but I don't want to talk about CLT for half hour. Yes. Yeah, so long story short with CLT construction, cross-laminated timber, is that the thickness of the columns and beams, which are the structural members of the building, which is what you're worried about in a fire, right, are thick enough and you know, they're big. They're, you know, 12 by 12, 12 by 18 in our case. They're big enough so that they can actually withstand, depending on the construction type, up to a couple hours of fire. So they actually compete with steel in the end because even steel deflects in a fire eventually. So think about it like burning a phone book in your fireplace, right? You just set it in there. It doesn't combust because it's so dense and it's so thick. That's how I like to think about CLT in a fire. Not much to say on this one, except that we are utilizing the 1.5% GET funds. So PV panels on the roof of building A, one of the 3 buildings on the south facing aspect of that building, and all across the building for the car part there as well. Just because those are roof surfaces that are facing south and will get the most solar benefit. Okay, and we've touched on this, but essentially we broke the building into 3 smaller buildings, which has all kinds of benefits cost-wise and otherwise, but we also like it because it promotes the idea of people circulating on foot rather than just taking the elevator up and down every day. So there's kind of a nice fitness benefit there for the staff and the visitors. And then tree preservation. So this is a sketch on the right from our landscape architect. There are a few hundred large trees on the site currently. Unfortunately, because of the steepness of the grade and all the cut and fill that we need to do just to get the road in and get the building pads in, all those things, a lot of those trees will go away. But we're doing, I would say, a really good faith effort in working with our arborists and working with our landscape architects to preserve as many of the big ones that we can, for all kinds of reasons, but mostly just for the shade and the kind of climate benefits. So now we're just going to go through a few images of the project. I guess we've seen this one already. Oh yeah. So the wetland you can see in the lower right. So that's actually the real location of the wetland. So when you're in the upper building, which is kind of an office building essentially, the other two are more utilitarian. They house the truck and the fleet maintenance and those things. But the one that's kind of elevated, you can see in the kind of background there, is mostly office, conference spaces, things like that, communal spaces for the staff. So we really love the idea that they'll have some windows that look down onto the wetland. So, once again, we're trying to not see the wetland as a impediment or a challenge. We're trying to use the challenge as a way to make the project more interesting and better and something we celebrate. We really like this moment of the project. Again, very simple utilitarian structures, but they kind of come together at this angle. We use the metaphor that it was like a log jam, kind of these things terracing down the hill. But there's not a lot of gymnastics required in terms of the structural layout of the building. So they're still pretty simple structures and simple envelopes. There'll be a kind of, thanks Morgan, there'll be a kind of outdoor deck space that kind of is basically the fore lobby. And then there's an elevator and a stair that can carry staff or visitors down to the lower fleet maintenance building. So it just gives them some efficiency of movement there. We need the elevator for ADA reasons and all that stuff, but we're trying to do as many things as we can to make the kind of movement between buildings be enjoyable on foot. And then the kind of main entry view from the kind of northwest of the project, you can see there's a clear story band of windows up above. So again, that's a kind of daylight strategy. So like if the power goes out, or it's also just saves energy in general because you don't need as much electric lighting. But we love the idea of using daylighting to get light in. It also just helps with performance and quality of life. And then you can see the CLT beams and columns exposed kind of on the underside of the roof there. Everything will be protected, flashed, so that the wood, there's no risk of the wood getting water intrusion, but we like exposing it as much as we can. So that's a metal we call it standing seam metal roof. It's painted. So this is kind of a dark gray color. We'll dial in the color, but we like this kind of dark gray with the wood. And we're essentially using it across the project. It's another kind of cost savings thing. As much as you can limit, selecting a million different materials, it'll help everybody. But we like the kind of simplicity that gives the project too.
It'll give it a campus feel, consistency across all the buildings. And then also just with the metal, there's just benefits that come out of it. It gives an attachment point. It's better for fire protection. Better for the solar panel. It'll last a long time, so maintenance is easier, fall protection's easier. And it's a common, readily available product. So.
And we can run through this pretty quickly, but this is the site plan. If anybody has questions, we do. So you can see the 3 buildings there, all the parking. We've got fleet parking and vehicular parking in that lower lot. There is a upper lot where we've got a lot of things that the public works folks need. So there's fueling up there. There will be a place to get fuel for the fleet vehicles. There's a car wash up there so they can wash the fleet trucks. There's some decant and dewatering things up there as well, material storage.
I would just add that due to the site, topography, this prevents city staff that may be coming and going from the site to have to venture all the way down, right? It gives them kind of a middle landing spot. And then for some of the other city departments that may utilize those amenities, again, it prevents them from having to kind of make their way all the way down into the site. So there's some security provisions, some safety provisions that go along with putting all this program up here. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So there. You don't even remember, you don't even. So far,
We could go back to the state plan.
far side, that wide bit, a lot of it. But really, water tanks further down the road, so. See the ravine right there?
The question was the water, existing water tank. So right here is the ravine. So that is the deep point. The water tank is like approximately down right in here. If that makes sense. Yeah. So you would work your way up, and if you drive up Salamo Road now, the existing curb cut is in place. They brought the sidewalk from Barrington Heights down to where the actual road would be. So when you drive, you can kind of see it. And the intent, yeah, you can see how far up the hill the houses are, but our site is really going to be kind of developed in here, and that road will come down. When you drive up Salamo Road, the intent is all of that green buffering, all those trees stay in place. And so the only real view you would get is where that curb cut is down the driveway. And the nice designer kind of eloquent way of us thinking is that the building will kind of slightly reveal itself to people coming up and down Salamo Road.
And you can just barely see the water reservoir. Yeah.
We're always concerned seismically in this region. I think most people are probably tired by now of hearing about the big one. It is a reality. So these facilities will be designed as essential facilities in terms of their seismic design. So ideally, they are able to withstand, the major event and allow the city to continue to provide services. That is it's a major component of this project. Yeah. And we have a robust engineering team on board. So we have a geotech soils engineer who has been on the project, gosh, I think since prior to the city purchasing the property. We have tracked him and he is still today providing services. So he's got a lot of institutional knowledge. We are definitely looking at how we cut in the road. That is probably that's the complication on this project. Once you get that road cut in and you can bring equipment, construction equipment and material down to the site, you really have now got an open construction site. So not as much concerns with soil mitigation and whatnot. We feel like we have a good handle on that. We have a robust soils report and feel that we're well ahead of it. And we don't require a lot of site retainage as well. This is all of the road and access is all just good civil practice, just good grading. Yes, ma'am.
That we have had a discussion for a very long time. This bill that is historical.
Yeah, we ourselves have not engaged Grand Ron. Part of the permitting process, land use process, they will get engaged through the State Historic Preservation Office. So they will come in and voice an opinion. If it is an area of significant resource, then we'll have to address that. I will say though that obviously we're on some virgin ground, if you will, coming up and down the hill. But the property has had prior development, so for whatever that's worth, yeah. ODOT's development, yeah, yeah, yeah. Nothing up the hill, but we've got disturbed ground and there's some history there, so. Great question.
So I could take you through the floor plans and the elevations real quick. So building A is the one kind of closest to the road. It's building A, this one right here. This building. And so, but that's what we call the maintenance building. It's pretty utilitarian in its function. You can see it's got large format garage doors on both sides of it for all these bays that they bring the trucks in, as well as some office space and shop space. And there'll be a bunch of equipment, air compressors and things in there like that, but pretty run-of-the-mill public works. And then we see the elevations in here as well, just so folks can see them. Single-story building, kind of has like a, like a gabled roof, kind of almost like agricultural kind of look to it. Though we've detailed it and thought about it in a more kind of modern way. And then building B, fleet repair and streets. So similar, slightly different grid for different uses, but again, we've got large format garage doors on the west side of it. And that's for the trucks to come in and get serviced, as well as some office and laundry and other support spaces in there for the workers to clean their gear and do other things that they need to do. And then building C, or that's the elevation, sorry, for building B. So very similar. We've got some, again, some kind of clear story lighting up above there to bring daylight down into those spaces. So they've got nice daylighting to do their work in. And this one has a little mezzanine up top, so that's why this one's a little bit taller. But same cladding approach, same finish, same structural system. And then building C, this is the one we showed in the rendering. Is, like I said before, it's mostly kind of an office building. So they've got their teaming spaces in there where they come together in the morning and they get their kind of marching orders for the day, all the different groups, Parks and Rec, Water, Environmental, and then they proceed out to do their work for the day. But there's also some nice teaming spaces, some conferencing spaces. There's a nice big locker room. They all have their own locker, and plenty of restrooms to change and do all that. Yeah, so we like the layout of this building a lot. We feel like it's going to really help them in the future. Yeah, so great point. So the you can see kind of the office spaces on the plan south there. So there's the teaming spaces and some of the office spaces and conferencing spaces. So all of those will have glass. So they'll be able to look out to the wetland to the south, which will be kind of a nice kind of biophilic, place to be. And then we have the elevations for this one too. So this one kind of steps down the hill, but essentially it's a one-story building. So you can see in the upper elevation, you see all the windows and then the clear story glass above. And then on the south elevation, you see the stair coming down. So that's just kind of mitigating the difference between the natural grades up here and the grades down here. So there's about a 30-foot drop from up here to down here. And retaining wall there as well. So we wish it wasn't such a big drop, but that's kind of a natural condition of the site. And then you can see it's kind of cool in both of those kind of middle elevations, there's a break in the roof line where we've got the clear story glazing to bring that daylight in from the south. And that's kind of it. So we're happy to go back through and address anything that we need to go back to, or I'll start with you.
Building, controlling the water to the pipes to the city, is that correct? Not at all? Because the building I went to was the water, no, not water treatment, but water.
So those that work on water infrastructure in the city,
There's nothing here in the project that would control water distribution from the site.
Well, we do have our SCADA system will be here, and that's what
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, yes, they will have. But it's software, it's connectivity. Yeah, good point on the SCADA, Eric. Yes, sir.
There was a question about the square footage of the three buildings combined. Altogether, it's roughly 45,000 square feet. Yeah. I can give you a precise number later if you want, but that's around the size. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's a great question. So like you said, the freeway is going to provide a lot of masking. And in our mind, the natural topography of this site is going to take all that noise generation and push it to the lowest facility, right? We've designed this so that most of the vehicles utilizing the site can always move in a forward motion, which is just best practice. The only building that you'll have to throw a vehicle in reverse is getting out of this. So limit the amount of beep, beep, background. They're not doing construction on this site. They're loading up material. They will run some large of equipment, but the idea is that they can deploy out into site now and out to the city. During construction, we're going to operate during normal business hours and normal city ordinance. And again, I do fully believe you're going to get a lot of buffering just from the natural topography. And just work really well with our GC partners to make sure that everyone that's up above and around is understanding, working together, and making sure, again, that it's a minimal impact. It's construction. Construction is going to take about a year, if not 14, 15 months. So plan for that. As you know that, the early earthwork, that's probably the most disturbance, cutting in that road. But once they start going vertical and start drying in the building, it like kind of tones down a little bit. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Can I add to that real quick? Sorry.
Please do.
Kathy, to interrupt. There isn't a whole lot of work that actually goes on at the site day to day. We're out doing other stuff around the city. You might hear some backup beepers from a backhoe or a loader or another truck occasionally, but we're out doing other stuff across the city. So there's not a lot of active work on the site. Not to say that there won't be, with the decant facility, the vac truck will be pulling in, dumping to dry the material out, so on. But overall, once it's built, it should be pretty quiet.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Traffic, I don't know if you want, Eric, if you want to hit on that a little bit. I feel like that's similar to the response you just gave on noise. Um, y- you know,
Yeah.
oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah, and no, I fully understand. I don't want to get too far out over my ski to speak for the GC partner. It's something maybe we can follow up with a little bit more detail, but from my experience, this project won't have flaggers on Solano Road. You know, most of the activity is going to be down on the construction site. And so with a curb cut in place and, you know, good traffic vision, people coming and going from the site, there's not a big concern. We know right-hand turns, left-hand turns out of the site will cause some, you know, delays potentially. But we don't really see a big impact during construction, at least we don't anticipate. And when we get Skanska fully on board and engaged, and you know, maybe we can follow up with a little bit more information. But I wouldn't envision flaggers and, or that type of component on Solamo. The goal is to keep Solamo active and going. As part of the rationale, the city elected to, you know, to build here. Solamo is very important. It gives them ease of access and maintenance. So during construction, we're going to be on top of that and make sure the GCs know that, hey, traffic has got to flow. For sure.
Can I add to that? As you said, we don't fully know. During the proposals and the interviews, we heard several different proposals on how they wanted to address that. But I think the common theme was, what was the terminology, right? Time deliveries or something where if they have a particular beam or column, rafter in the building, that's getting delivered at this exact time for unloading, for installation. There's not a lot of trucks that are going to happen to show up and be parked on Solamo and then walk down and be like, hey, where does this particular piece of equipment go? That's not going to happen. There's also talk about, you know, we have the left turn bay coming down the hill, but maybe we build a right turn, widen that out and remove some guardrail to allow trucks to get off sooner. So there's opportunities. We're not saying there won't be flaggers. That's still an opportunity, but depending on what the first thing is to get the road built, to then get the deliveries off and down into the site.
There's going to be a lot of sequencing of events, materials coming and going. We really have to make sure that any construction debris that we create stays on site. So how the contractor will do that will kind of be up to them, where they put those washout points and stuff. So there was going to be, since Solamo is the one way in and one way out, there's going to be activity there and a lot of control, if that makes sense. Yes, sir.
The construction.
Yeah.
Seems just.
Yeah.
I have come to know. Impact during your. Site. Or. Example of the impact. But. No, it's. That.
Interesting.
First, typically, just forced every day. And it's not like the probably set $5.
Yeah, fortunately, there's a lot of land here that they will be able to park on and stage. Again, that's kind of means and methods with the contractor, and I would love the contractor to kind of drive that conversation. But I can envision that most of the workers are going to park on site, not in the neighborhoods. Contractor's not going to want that. We understand.
Yeah.
They're gonna walk.
There shouldn't be any
Yeah.
reason that contractors have to park
No,
on
no,
Solamo.
they're not going to want to park in the neighborhood. They know. Well, that's what we're going to be asking them as soon as we get them on
Yeah.
contract. Like, how do you build the road, right? Because the first obstacle is to actually get the equipment down there. All of the groups that we've talked to know, hey, the first game is going to be get that road built. And we really think they can bench it in as they go. So you're not going to see a lot of need to occupy and utilize things up on Solano Road. They'll be able to keep a lot of the activity, if not all of the activity, on the job site. And that's going to be a big part of the requirement, right? That's what we're going to have them figure out as soon as they get on board. Yeah, and that's the constructability piece. That's why we're going through the alternate delivery method. So we get that technology, we get that, the approach up front.
And it's a sequencing thing, right? From day one, we're not going to have 150 workers on site ready to go. It's going to be the excavation contractor building the roads.
Running
And,
equipment.
and then once that road gets built in, gets access to the site. Again, as Brandon said, it's kind of needs and methods. We still don't know fully what the contractor is proposing. Again, some of the applicants were talked about renting, I don't know what church, but they had said something about renting parking lot somewhere and shuttling. I don't, so lots of different ideas floated around there. But again, we have 30 acres, so there shouldn't be any reason to be able to park.
And I'll just
Offsite.
add that when we were interviewing CMGCs, one of the main things we were grilling them on was their communication strategy and their staging strategy. So what are you guys doing for staging and communications? And so the other side of this is communications, right? So like we will make a lot of effort and again, it gets into means and methods, but we're gonna propose that they give us a plan that we communicate effectively so that you all can know what's coming and you can anticipate it.
Getting all the messaging.
Fully agree, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I can't make any promises right now. I can't speak for the contractor. But what we're going to be asking is that they are hand in hand in that communication effort, leaning on Luke to make sure you guys are informed. And then any questions you have or any concerns you have throughout the process, as a group, we're going to make sure they're addressed and we're coming back to you. It's, like I said, it's going to be 12 to 15 months of construction to get this wonderful facility built. There are going to be challenges, there's going to be noise, there's going to be things like that. And we just you have to understand that you've got a good partnership with the team and we're going to do our part to make sure that you're brought along in the project. Yes, I'll let Jeff talk a little bit about stormwater. I am going to apologize because I have to go to another public meeting in Oregon City. So I'm going to duck out and you're in good hands. Okay, thank you all too for being here.
Thanks, Brandon. I did want to just touch on proper channels for communications. If there is a concern, is it through Luke, sorry. So he's the person to contact, then he will come to the GC and us, and we'll try to figure out what's going on. Oh, so you're specifically talking about the development of the design after the land use application?
I can address this a little bit. So we will be working with our GC and Luke. There will be comprehensive websites developed. There will be QR codes. There will be newsletters. There will be large scale communication very regular basis. It is a top concern of ours. This is the largest project West Linn has done. It is very important to us that we have the support of the community and that it's clearly communicated. Luke will be your main point of contact. If when you see things, you have questions, you want clarity, you have feedback, but we will be outwardly pushing lots and lots of communication electronically, newsletter, and in person neighborhood association meetings and town halls.
I think there might have been one more question about water and then we'll answer your question.
Hey,
What can we, that doesn't.
yeah, so I can take that one. And, you know, as we were talking briefly before the meeting, you know, your engineering parameters are good for a specific storm, and anything that comes beyond that, you're limited, right? Like if it's a 100-year storm, you're not designed for that. You're going to have issues. One of the things that the contractor has proposed is starting with the heavy civil construction in the spring to avoid the wet season. And so that would hopefully avoid any issues that might arise from working over the winter. So that's good news. As far as stormwater and what that's going to look like and where it's going to go, we don't know yet, because we're still working with, you know, I haven't seen the
Civil engineering.
100% civil designs for the stormwater and all the utilities. So we're still working through that. But yeah, the goal is, you know, this contractor does, you know, $100 million projects. They're going to have tip-top erosion control measures, backup, and so, you know, we're confident that we're going to be in a good spot with our stormwater facilities and erosion control, by potentially avoiding the wet winter season.
Thanks, Eric.
Curiosity for like the long-term traffic.
I believe we're sized right now for just under 60. And that includes seasonal employees with parks and public works.
Our facility, that number of employees is all for Sunset and York, so right in the neighbor, right next to, yeah, neighbors.
On 2 acres.
Just an emergency. On access and emergency. So Salamo is an emergency route, right? Is maintained as an emergency route and similar to Sunset. So our crews have to get up that during, you know, winter storms, during wind events, that kind of thing. And so this is, you know, it's a very similar road to what we're already navigating. And so I'm pretty confident in accessing that and maintaining, you know, Salamo being open. And so that's.
Yes.
So they're the ones who would be removing the tree from the road. So they have chainsaws, they have equipment, they have heavy equipment. They have, you know, they're the ones who removed the 2,100 trees during the windstorm. So this is what that facility is for. It's for that equipment. And so, yeah, and this is during storms. We have guys on alert. We have guys at the facility. Not via car. They could park and walk in, would be,
Yeah, I mean, if push came to shove, there's access through ODOT's site. But again, like Luke said, the guys at this facility are the ones that are going to have the equipment to be able to take care of that tree or whatever. Again, we're working on options. You know, the access road is down under 10% coming into the property now. So we've worked really hard at limiting the steepness to that road. And we're exploring other options to keep it open during the cold months.
It's also going to be built as a fire access road, so the width is wide enough to get fire trucks in there. The compaction and the way that the road is built itself could support this. I'm talking about this access road right here, all the way to that structure, and then all the way down to these structures. the red ones.
Across. Yeah, and that goes down. So it obviously notified them.
Yeah, it's kind of, you can see the grading kind of up here in this red. It's really steep, just kind of northwest of there. And so we're basically just finding the closest we can possibly be to the toe of that slope. And that's where we bring everybody in. And then like Eric said, we're not going above 10% grade for any of the roads. And then you kind of get your first peek at the more administrative building, and then you continue down to the bottom pad where the other two more utility buildings are.
And another, so that's parking and some material storage. Yeah.
There's a little car wash there for cleaning the fleet vehicles. There's a fueling station there for fueling the police cars and fueling the fleet vehicles. So it's kind of but again, the grade continues steeply up from there as well. So we feel like a lot of that gets shielded from view looking from above.
The car wash is not like down, yeah, on Hidden Springs, no lights. Yeah, it's like a pressure washer. So we have one,
They're wash bays, not.
bays,
like a-
has drains, has pressure washer, that kind of thing. Little, probably water heater, that kind of thing to, not automated car wash. No, yeah. And then the other thing about emergency access, I just wanted to mention that this facility will have that our current one doesn't, is restrooms, not restrooms, but like sleep rooms. So when we have a winter storm coming right now, guys are in an office, right, sitting in an office chair all night, or waiting to go out, waiting for the storm to hit. Whereas now we'll have a couple of rooms that, as we're running long shifts, as we're doing overtime, the guys can come back, or in preparation for a storm, stay at the facility until they're needed, which will be a great asset.
And in lunch rooms, kitchens, not commercial grade ovens and so on, but they'll have the opportunity to cook and prepare meals as you would at your home. In these long events, we have folks that live out in Estacada, Colton, have 30-mile commutes. So for them to go home in a snowstorm and then come back 8 hours later is a tall order. So if they have rooms to stay and have accommodations to support that, it's going to be huge.
We also have a large generator planned for the project so that we can plan for a 3-day event. If the power all goes out, there's another big ice storm, or there's another big event, that they can all be there for a minimum of 3 days and have lights and have communications and have the ability to work on behalf of the city during those events. I think there's Heated Street. What was that?
So if there's a water main break in the middle of the night, the non-emergency, there's a pager, cell phone that would call in each. So we have an environmental services, a water, and a streets person on call. So if someone runs over a stop sign or something, someone will come in the middle of the night and replace it.
Yeah, from our understanding, and I think Eric might know better, but sometimes police officers choose to fuel at the fueling station in the public works. So the idea is that that would happen here as well. So there'll be a fueling island with diesel and with unleaded gasoline for them to, if they're in this area, they can stop in and get gas as well. Yeah.
It's not underground, it's above ground. Yeah. Yeah. And I believe PD, if the tank is operable, fuels up at Public Works. If it's down, they'll go elsewhere to a local gas station. Yeah. And then another thing about the question about snow plows or what's going to be stored there. We have, in addition to our 2 acres over off of Norfolk in the Sunset area, we have several other remote facilities that are storing equipment. The old storage yard along Willamette Falls Drive, you see some equipment out there. All of that could be relocated and have room consolidated in one location.
And in heated garages. Right now, we don't have any heated garages for any of our equipment. And so we have to, de-water our Vector every day in the winter after we use it, which is a, time consuming.
One thing that slipped my mind when I was answering your question about seismology and sort of like the GC that we are likely hiring for this project also will be doing seismic monitoring. So there'll be meters in place so that, if anything does start to move or there's a kind of issue, that we'll know about it before we can feel any of it. So that's another kind of safety thing that we're going to have. Vibration monitoring, yes. Yeah, vibration monitoring as well. Yes.
So, sorry to interrupt you there. I can address that. So as a preview, I guess last year when we did complete the Salamo project, I had approached ODOT about doing a traffic study, a speed study, and they recently got back to us on that. And so that speed limit now, I don't even think it's up anymore, but the lower piece of Salamo, I think, was 45 even. And so it's going to be lowered all the way down from Weather Hill. So, and again, it's enforcement, but engineering, education, and enforcement, they've all got to work together. But we are going to be lowering that speed limit. So. Yeah.
And the other thing is our crews are in earlier. I think it's 6:30 for some of the ops guys. And so, their rush hour traffic is not necessarily commuting time, right? They're in, in the facility and out before traffic. So they, try and beat traffic that way. And then are in a little earlier in the afternoon. So.
I don't think we have one in terms of construction schedule. I think we need to firm that up with the general contractor once they're on board. We think in total the construction will last about 14 months. The only question is when we start, because there's been different theories from different GCs on when the best time to start is. Do you just jump on it and get going this fall, or do you wait until the spring after the rain is dissipated to kind of take advantages of the weather pattern? So Eric, Morgan, do you have any comments about time frame? I think,
Yeah, so we'll just start briefly. So on June 16th, we will be presenting our pre-construction contract. So that is with the GC, we'll be working with our design team for final design, constructability, making suggestions on best practices, when to start earthwork, all of that stuff to mitigate, and make sure it's efficient, make sure that traffic control is in place, building permits are secured. We can start long lead items. Procurement for mechanical systems that might take a long time. And then our goal for construction and operability is late spring to early summer 2026. So 27, sorry, yes. So when we will start specifically is determined on what comes out of the pre-construction phase. But our goal is to be operable by spring or early summer 2027. Again, we have a very capable contractor that is going to be coming on board, and they have been very committed to working closely with the city. We do have some residents that work for that company. They are invested in this community, and they are invested in making sure this project goes very well.
any other questions?
Stick around.
Yeah, we can stick around a little bit. Thanks for coming. Yeah, it was fun to do it. So appreciate you guys showing up, and yeah, we'll stick around. Okay, good.